Is Whitney Webb, a fellow freedom maxi and investigative journalist, right about it being too late to save Bitcoin from Wall Street and government coercion? Let's dive into it. Feels like there's a bit of a split going on in the Bitcoin community, and we're kind of like morphing into finance bro and freedom bro, where you've got this number go up addict, which obviously, if you've been watching me for enough time, you know that I despise, and you've got the freedom principles, Bitcoin as a freedom tech. Obviously, this is a camp that I fall into. And I think this has been going on for a little while, but it obviously got a lot worse or a lot more heightened, or the feeling got a little bit stronger once the ETFs were released. Even more broadly than that, I think the media attention, or the stuff that at least gets the clicks or that's sitting in my click in my algorithm, has been about the financialization of Bitcoin rather than the utility of the freedom protocol that is capital B, big B, Bitcoin. And you can see it in who's popular and who's talking about it. I mean, we had Trump at the Bitcoin conference a few weeks ago talking about sending Bitcoin to the moon, not necessarily talking about self-custody and talking about Bitcoin as a sovereignty tool. The primary was, I'm going to send Bitcoin to the moon, blah, blah, blah. We have House of Chimera here on Twitter signaling that BlackRock's spot Bitcoin ETF represents 24% of the firm's global ETF flows. Yes, $1 in $4 that comes into BlackRock is going to their Bitcoin ETF. The Bitcoin ETF isn't real Bitcoin. This is paper Bitcoin. This is a financialized asset version of Bitcoin. And so we have Whitney Webb. And so here we've got her on the TFTC podcast, and I want to hear what she has to say.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to say, too, that I think there's a lot of people in the Bitcoin media space that will never talk about this or what you just mentioned. And I think a lot of that is because a lot of money and effort has been put into specifically homogenizing media discourse in the Bitcoin space, because they want Bitcoiners as much as possible to be compliant.
Yo, that is such an interesting take. So she's suggesting here, as far as I can tell, and of the 35 seconds that I've watched, Whitney's suggesting here that there is actually a cohorted effort behind putting money into media to make Bitcoin more of a financial tool. I've obviously not getting any of that money. I'm not getting those phone calls. I'm sat here running a Freedom Maxi platform in Bitcoin Well, and obviously talking about Bitcoin as a freedom tool. But the suggestion that, is that bought and paid for? Is the media, are they not talking about Bitcoin as a freedom tool? Because financial freedom is such a sensitive topic right now. When you talk about freedom, even in Canada here, where I'm from, we had a trucker protest a couple of years ago, and just that event in and of itself is like almost taboo to talk about it. People don't want to talk about the fact that, or people had their banks closed and their funds frozen, their money was frozen, that there's still, and I think that talking about financial freedom, not in like the MLM sense of like be your own boss financial freedom, but more so in the like, I am free to financially transact with who I want, that is a little bit of a niche of the internet that is becoming a bit taboo.
While Larry Fink and his ilk do what they want with Bitcoin and make it what they want it to be, so that people are content with number go up and sort of the Sailor-esque talking points that have gotten a lot of,
I really like that point there where she says Larry Fink wants to do what he wants with Bitcoin. Guys, he is in for a rude awakening when he figures out he cannot control Bitcoin.
There needs to be a cultural shift in Bitcoin in the opposite direction of what this Diego guy from Rootstock said, where he's like, we need to drop the whole, stop fiscal irresponsibility of the banks and central banks and, be a challenge and threat to their power. We have to drop that if we want to get rich. I mean, that's the mentality there.
You do have to drop that if you want to get rich. However, you shouldn't want to get rich. You should want to build the world that you want to leave to your children. You have to work hard to plant a tree, to plant a garden of whose shade you will never benefit. That is what Bitcoiners in 2024 are meant to be doing. We have to build the platforms, build the protocols, build the technology that enables people to use Bitcoin as a financial tool, but also as a freedom tool for generations to come. We are not going to get rich with that. However, the world will be more free in the future.
And I feel like the sailor mentality really isn't that different from that. We have to push people in the other direction, because if we go in the direction they're pushing those, people to go in, people that want to drop the ethos or whatever and make Bitcoin just a tool for Wall Street. I mean, no. If we let that happen, very bad things happen. And there has to be a fight. And there's a specific effort that's been launched against people that hold Bitcoin to try and get them to be compliant in that sense.
Yeah, she's not wrong there. I don't love like the verbiage of fight and this like war mentality. I think that Bitcoiners are above that, but I do agree that there is a concerted effort being put onto Bitcoiners in the self-custody. It is mind-blowing to me that a government or a regulating body has the audacity to come out against self-custody, to come out against holding the money that you create with your time somewhere other than in your possession. It is mind-blowing that we are so psyopted as a society that people, that even one person actually thinks this is a good idea is mind-blowing to me. Because if you give someone else power over your money, over your value, over your time, then you become their slave.
There needs to be a desire among Bitcoiners to return to the original ethos, not the opposite. There needs to be a fight for that. People need to care about that again.
Yeah, people need to care about that again. And I like that a lot because I don't know that it is actually a return to what Bitcoin was. I think it's coupling the sense that we should not ignore Bitcoin as a financial asset. Bitcoin is like a financial asset is a very important part of being free. Bitcoin is a financial asset. It just has to be looked at more broadly. We have to morph this like financial asset with this freedom asset. We have to blend those two together to build the future of what Bitcoin is going to be, which is so much more than just some financial asset.
FTX was collapsing around us, literally, our phones are blowing up. All this crazy shit's happening November 2022. Sailors on stage saying, don't be a martyr. Don't fight the system. Stable coins on Lightning is a $10 trillion industry. Let's go. Let's bring it on. We're all going to get rich. Don't be a martyr. Now,
Bend over for Larry.
Yeah. Bite the pillow. They're going in raw. I don't want this to be like calling for people to go be a martyr. Like, I'm not saying go set yourself on fire in front of, the BlackRock headquarters. That's not helpful or useful either. It's not productive at all. Plus the emissions, the carbon emissions from burning yourself, I think, it's very bad. I would hate to see.
You're gonna get an estate tax ding on top.
Yeah, your
of that.
family will be taxed for that. Yeah,
but there has to be things we have to do.
There's a harder path to take. It's going to take longer. It's going to take a lot more effort. It's going to take a lot more education, new learnings from individuals to actually interact with this, compared to an ETF where you interact with TD Ameritrade or whoever, and you just click a button and that's your interaction with Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think this is why, as a society, it requires a societal shift. I feel like that shift is happening, but it requires a lowering of our time preference. We have to escape this high time preference thinking, which again is only indicated or is only come into society because the money is so bad, because the money is so corrupt and so worthless. We are forced to make shorter and shorter and shorter term decisions. But when you adopt a Bitcoin standard, you naturally zoom out. You naturally have a longer time preference because the money that you hold, you trust that money will have value longer and longer and longer into the future. We see in the comments, worldwide Bitcoiners will not let them down. Stop complaining about number go up, because that is power goes up for Bitcoiners. If some are only into Bitcoin for money, some are in with strong political will to change the world. Yeah, I don't really think that's necessarily true. I think that number go up in and of itself, obviously everyone wants that. We all want more purchasing power. If you only have number go up and you do not have control of the money, it is completely useless. An example here would be if you've got a Bitcoin ETF and Bitcoin goes to $1 million per coin. The government, who controls the Bitcoin ETF, has full right to say Bitcoin ETFs in their special class are taxed at 99%. Now that would be one jurisdiction, one government saying that, but it's a possibility. It is not a likely scenario, but it is well within the realm of possibility. And so if that were the case, if you've got a Bitcoin ETF that's now punitively taxed, you cannot just leave. You are forced to either hold that or sell that. Those are your only two options. If you sell it, you lose. If you hold it, you can literally do nothing with it in the future. Every currency asset will be used and manipulated by the rich. However, Bitcoin restricts and limits the most effectively. This is such a good take. The reason we can have a small number of people controlling a large number of assets is because of centralization. A decentralized asset in Bitcoin is inherently restrictive or inherently kind of protected against that.
I think people need to get their head straight and be like, if Bitcoin is going to be a tool for financial freedom, and if I want the reasons I got into Bitcoin to still be Bitcoin in a few years, I need to think about how I can help that happen, because they're coming for it and they're going to turn it into something else unless people in the Bitcoin space start doing stuff. And it's not to say no one's doing anything, because people are, but there needs to be more awareness of this in the space, and people need to decide which camp they're in. And I think it needs to be culturally unpopular in the Bitcoin space to serve the co-opt agenda and make it a tool of Wall Street and global empire. You're either on the side of those guys or you're on the side of freedom in the public.
Yeah, it does. And all that's very true, but it doesn't actually market or brand or legitimize the right Bitcoin, not the freedom Bitcoin. It's still taboo to say, I donate Bitcoin where I want to who I want to, because I believe in this legal and good cause. It's still taboo to say, I hold my Bitcoin because I don't want government seizures, because I don't want a 6102 to happen. I don't want to be exposed to the government in my Bitcoin.
The stakes are higher than they've arguably ever been, because if they manage to get the system in place because of the technology and what they hope to do to people, going as far as stuff like the brain chip and stuff, if it gets to that point, it becomes very hard to undo. And the implications for humans being able to live free lives is very much at stake, right? So this is the time to fight this. It's now. If you're in the Bitcoin space, they want to use Bitcoin to serve their ends, not the people's ends.
I think what we as Bitcoiners need to do is support businesses, support platforms, support both direct Bitcoin businesses, but also broader business economies that understand Bitcoin as a freedom tool. I mean, this is why, in my opinion, a Bitcoin circular economy is becoming more and more and more important. As you guys saw a couple years ago, Julian and I traveled to Guatemala. We looked at what the Bitcoin circular economy was in Guatemala. Recently, Julian, Isabella, and I went to Vancouver, and we spent Bitcoin in my home country, in Vancouver. I got a haircut, I got a coffee, I got sashimi, I got all of these things paid for in Bitcoin. If you go to these circular economies, and we saw this mostly in Guatemala, no one's there accepting Bitcoin because it's a better payment tool, because it's some kind of financial asset. Well, I accept Bitcoin because BlackRock ETFs exist. No one's saying that. They're saying that because the centralization of payment systems are too expensive, making things unattainable and making business less profitable. But most importantly, they're saying it because no one can shut them down. In the comments we have, one thing I really like about Bitcoiners is the level of conviction we have. Andrew, fellow Bitcoiner, what's up? Apathy is popular. Today, few truly care about something enough to put everything they have into it. If this thing fails, we're going down with the ship. This is exactly why Bitcoin will not fail. What a mind bender there. Bitcoin will not fail because there is so much conviction behind it that it won't be possible. This is such an interesting thing. And you could argue, what makes it successful? Is it the people behind it, or is it the thing itself? It's a chicken or the egg dilemma. I love this take, and he's bang on. Guy Swan, what's up, Guy? Bitcoin's biggest problem is still privacy. Whew. And yeah, he's not wrong. Bitcoin wasn't built as some privacy tool. Bitcoin was built as a freedom tool. We now, the next generation of builders, have to build privacy into the protocol. The Lightning Network is more private than the Bitcoin mainnet. We have the Liquid Network, which is more centralized, but does offer certain levels of privacy. We do have technologies that exist that make it possible to preserve your privacy, but Bitcoin is not private by default. But I want to know from you, do you guys think that the self-sovereignty, the freedom that Bitcoin represents, is this a natural progression, or is it something that you have to actually seek out in order to find? Do you think that number go up, that these ETFs, that the centralization, financialization of Bitcoin is something that will naturally bring in more freedom down the line? Or what do we have to do to enable and to enhance the freedom that Bitcoin is? How do we get this mindset into society? Tell me down below in the comment section how you interact with the Bitcoin protocol and how you are going to help it grow as a freedom tool. That's it for me. Stay sovereign.